Hey, everybody. We have a very special week for you. We have a very special friend and a critically important topic. I think traumatic brain injury is a major cause of psychiatric problems that nobody knows about. And to help us spread this message, we have award-winning filmmaker Jerri Sher. Jerri is an Emmy Award-winning filmmaker, a member of the Directors Guild since 1998. She has completed 22 film and television projects. She wrote, directed, and produced Quiet Explosions, Healing the Brain, a new documentary that's out about traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress in veterans, athletes, and civilians. The film won Best Documentary Feature at the NoHo Cinefest and the Lilac Award at the SPIF International Film Festival. Was released November 10th, 2020 on Amazon and Vimeo by Cinema Libra Studio. I'm in it. Some of my patients are in it. If you haven't seen it, we would just dearly love for you to see it and review it. So, hi, Jerri.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here, Dr. Amen and Tana.
Absolutely.
So, tell us how you got involved in traumatic brain injury as a filmmaker.
Well, it's interesting. I'm not a doctor, nor am I a healer. And it's very interesting that somebody contacted me who knew me when I was 16 years old in Fall River, Massachusetts, believe it or not, when I was a babysitter earning extra money. And this girl, Beth, is an editor for books. And she was working up in Maine and just finished the book by Andrew Marr and Adam Marr, which is Tales from the Blast Factory. And she said she had been following my career my whole life, and I had no idea. And she reached out and said, you know, this book is amazing, and I know you only work on documentaries that's going to help society. I think you should make the movie of this. So can I put you in touch with this guy? I said, well, you know what? Everybody tells me they have the best book. You have to send me the Galleys. So I read the Galleys. I was very taken with it. And she put me in touch with this guy, Andrew Marr from Texas. He flew right out to see me. And I was leaving on a big trip, a big job in Australia and New Zealand in 2 weeks. And so he said, I want you to do this. And he looked at my work and he said, you have the rights to the story. So I said, I'll only do it under one condition, Andrew. It has to be a third military, a third athletes, and a third civilians, because traumatic brain injury is so important to the universe, not just one segment of people. And he said, yes. And our journey began.
That's awesome.
And how long did it take you to make the movie?
3 years.
Wow.
A lot of that time, though, was getting the funding in the beginning. So our shooting was about 9 to 12 months. And our post, which is the editing process and everything, was about a year.
Wow. It is such a powerful
it's
movie.
Really great.
And toward the end of it, you and I connected. I guess somebody told you about our work. And it was just so fun to be part of the process. You know, the work we do at Amen Clinics, we've known traumatic brain injury is a major cause of psychiatric problems, anxiety, depression, suicide, addiction. And nobody knows about it because most psychiatrists actually never look at the brain. And so we were thrilled to be part of it. Can you tell us one or two of the stories in the documentary that meant the most to you? I know we scanned Alan, your husband, so I know that must have been important.
Well, they're all extremely important and special to me because each one is so different and so unique. But I feel so grateful that we interviewed you at the very end of the process, because believe it or not, that was the best way for it to all congeal and come together, especially since you treated Sean Dollar, our surfer, who is so dear to me. And he's the only person in the film that had been treated by all three doctors, you and Dr. Gordon and Dr. Sammons and Dr. Sher. So, and then also the fact that you brought me Anthony Davis, who was the running back for the football NFL player, that was very special also. And I think in this process, it's very important that you sort of interview people at the right time in the process. Because if I had interviewed you first, I wouldn't have gotten such a fantastic, magnanimous story. My favorite person, they're all favorite to me in certain ways, but I'm extremely taken with Ben, because he just came to me in a very odd way. And he was a Marine who was ready to kill himself, put the gun in his mouth and said he was going to shoot himself. And then he just saw his mother looking over his grave, which was pretty extraordinary. The fact that my husband got to see you became like a miracle. Alan had surgery when he was 50. So that was like more than 2 decades ago, in 1998. And lost his short-term memory and had all of the exact same symptoms as all of the TBI and PTSD guys and girls. He was ready to kill himself because he had no knowledge of his children's names. Everything was gone from being in surgery 12 hours. So they saved his heart, but they really messed up his brain. And this happens to more than 50% of men who have open heart surgery at the age of 55 or less. Alan was 50. So when he started working with you and seeing the brain scans, he's gotten better and better and better. So we're very, very grateful. And that's not why I originally made the movie, but it was sort of a bonus for us as a family.
That's
well,
awesome.
When you do good, often good things happen.
And I love this because I love what you did, Jerri, because when you made this about really everybody out there. So we see this all the time, and I end up adopting people just because this is what happens, right? When you do what you do, when you do what we do. I have a very similar story where I adopted this kid who was a Marine and had a massive brain injury, watched all three of his friends die.
Find him?
At a survival training.
Tell me why you're going to don't I take good care of you?
You always say nothing bad can happen. And we just went through a pandemic, and I have a survival room full of stuff to survive pandemics. So I will never, ever not do this. No. So anyways, I took my daughter to this 3-day survival training. We were like, we had to build our own shelter and purify our own water and start fires from nothing. It was great. It was great training. But he started doing that after it really sort of saved him after being a Marine. And he not only they ran over an IED and his vehicle exploded. He was the only one to survive. He watched his 3 friends die. And I was hearing his story, and he, same thing, had a gun in his mouth. And I was just like, you have to come to the clinic. So we had him come to the clinic, and long story short, he is now just in this amazing place. His life is thriving. He's married. It's just, it's possible for this to get better. It's possible for these things to turn around. And these stories are just so heartbreaking. So I hand it to you for really making this about everybody and not just those couple of professional athletes.
Thank you. Well, I have a wonderful story to tell you, Dr. Amen, that this happened yesterday. I talked to Annie. She is my Navy gal who was from Texas, and she was treated by Dr. Gordon originally. And she was very severe. I mean, the Navy threw her out because she had been raped twice, and they said she was crazy, and they put her in a psych ward. It was a horrific story. She's been on CNN and everything. So she called me yesterday, and she told me that she wanted to thank me for putting her in touch with the Amen clinic that just opened in Dallas. That she went to. And she's on a path now with your clinic, and she said she's doing so well. And she said to me, I only wish I had started there. And I'm telling everyone, if you have a problem, start with the Amen clinic and then go to these other modalities. So I just thought it was very amazing that here I was going to be on your show today. And she called me yesterday to say, please tell Dr. Amen that I am so grateful that he opened in Dallas, and I am now one of the patients.
That's so fantastic.
Have her write to me, Jerri. That would be awesome for me to be connected with her. Yeah.
That's so great.
When we come back,
has a baby now, 17 months old. So her whole life completely turned around. And, you know, our first shoot for this movie was when she got her MBA at the University of Texas in Arlington. We went there to shoot that because I felt like that would be her climax of her story. And sure enough, that was our very first shoot day.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's really amazing. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the devastation of not getting this treated. There was just a story in the paper this morning about a former NFL player that murdered 5 people in South Carolina. And my first thought was the impact of being hit in the head thousands of times. Stay with us. We're going to come back. We're here with Jerri Sher, award-winning filmmaker and the writer, director, and producer of Quiet Explosions that you can stream now on Amazon or Vimeo. Stay with us.
Your brain is always listening. I am thrilled to be your guide and show you how to tame your dragons so that you can have the happiness, peace, and the relationships you deserve.
Welcome back. We are still here with our friend Jerri Sher, the producer of Quiet Explosions. We're just having this great conversation about brain injury and the effect of it. And it's such a great movie. If you haven't seen it, you should see it. You can see it on, I believe it's Prime and Vimeo. It's really a great movie. So, but we want to talk in this episode about the effects of not treating brain injuries.
And Jerri, I mean, you told us about Alan, and people don't know this, that long exposure to anesthesia, not for everybody, but for a vulnerable population, it damages their brain, just like you were in a car accident.
Yep.
And our assistant, Karen, I have her brain when she first started working with me, big, fat, healthy brain. And then she had an aortic aneurysm repaired, and it was an 8-hour surgery. And when she came back to work 6 weeks later, she's not the same. She used to be on top of things, and she's taking care of my patients. I'm like, this is important to me. And she's not on top of things anymore. And, you know, initially I got frustrated, and then I'm thinking something changed with the surgery. How I first found this out, it was probably 25 years ago. I treated this alcoholic in Oregon, and she got better. And so I have bad brain, good brain. I love that. And then she had knee surgery, and she calls me up. She goes, I have Alzheimer's disease. I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like crying. And so I scan her again. Her bad brain's back. And it got me thinking that general anesthesia for vulnerable people can damage their brain like a head injury.
And I'm not so sure. I think for vulnerable people, I'm not sure it has to be 12 hours. That happened to me after 4-hour surgery. I kept telling you, I don't feel right. I'm not as happy, and I feel like I'm walking through mud. And I was like, is it physical? Is it hormonal? But when we scanned me, it was my brain.
It was not.
It was the anesthesia.
A happy brain.
Yeah.
And so you went in a hyperbaric chamber and
started upped my exercise again and
upped your supplements,
diet.
So, what were some of the common themes, Jerri, that you saw of the people who struggled? So we've already talked about memory loss, suicidal ideation. What else did you see that surprised you?
Well, Sean Dollar, who you know very well, our famous surfer, he actually had bouts of crying. He was like almost like in a fog. It was like his brain was foggy all the time. He couldn't function. And that was very prevalent in our Green Beret also, Andrew Marr and Kevin. So I found that people, first of all, they couldn't remember anything. They had no short-term memory whatsoever. but they had crying bouts. They also, many of them had insomnia. They couldn't sleep. They were very agitated and they had huge anxiety. And the interesting thing, which you probably saw this in Monday or Tuesday in the Wall Street Journal this week, there was a huge article about COVID patients now who had COVID months ago have the same exact symptoms as these people with TBI and PTSD, mostly.
The long haulers.
And I said to myself, to my publicist, you need to call this woman who wrote this article and tell her about this movie. If people watch Quiet Explosions, Healing the Brain, there are methods and ways to help yourself, to go to the Amen Clinic, to start hyperbaric oxygen therapy, TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, and so on. I am just so grateful to all the people who contact me, and I'm sure you guys. Hey, thank you for making this movie. I was about to kill myself, and I saw the movie, and now I'm going to stay alive. Thank you. Mm. What a feeling.
It's so great.
It's nothing better. There's nothing better. But undiagnosed brain injuries. And, you know, one of the big things I learned early on is people forget that they've had brain injuries. After Tana and I met, January 1st, 2006, was immediately taken with her. She's beautiful, she's smart, she's kind, she's thoughtful, she's articulate. But I will never fall in love with someone until I see their brain. Not gonna happen. And so a couple of weeks later, I'm like, hey, you haven't seen the clinic. Do you want to come see the clinic?
So I can see your naked brain.
And she had a healthy brain, except I could see where sometime in the past, in the left side of her brain, it had been hurt. And I'm like, have you ever had a brain injury?
And I'm like, nope, I'm a neurosurgical ICU trauma nurse. So for me, brain injury means you've had part of your skull removed, you've got a brain drain, I can see gray matter, that's brain injury. And I'm like, no.
But I learned a long time ago that you have to ask more than once. And I'm like, are you sure? Have you ever fallen out of a tree, off a fence, dove into a shallow pool, been in a car accident, had a concussion playing sports? And then you said,
yes, but I mean, I got in a really bad car accident where it flipped 2.5 times going 75 miles an hour, but I walked away from it. And so I thought I was okay because I didn't break any bones. I wasn't, in a coma.
So if we just think brain is soft.
No, I know. Shaken baby syndrome, you go to jail for.
Skull is hard. Skull has sharp bony ridges, 75 miles an hour.
Right. Shaken baby syndrome.
Yeah. Severe shaken baby syndrome. Right.
Yeah. So when you explain it that way, and the funny thing is, I mean, I survived because I was laying back, but my head slammed against the center console. So that's probably where it happened.
Which is why in the movie, they refer to it as the invisible illness. Many people have this. They don't even know it.
Absolutely.
It's invisible. You can't see that they lost a limb when they come back from war. It's in their head. And this is what was so astounding to the 10 different characters in our movie from different walks of life, different socioeconomic areas, different geographic areas. Yet when they all met at the cast and crew event, they were crying tears of joy that they knew that they each had the same exact symptoms and they had someone to bond with. It was an amazing thing.
And what I find interesting is it's obviously it's a continuum. So you've got people who are at the severe end, like the people that you talked to and that you really helped through this, Jerri. But you've got people who are either more like me or maybe a little worse than I was, where we're functional, we're okay, but we're struggling with certain things and we don't really know why, and we think it's really just our fault. And so it's like, I need more discipline. So I mean, I was rigidly disciplined because I knew I had to be like rigid. And my life was, if you looked at me from the outside, everything's good. So many people who are listening, it's like, okay, we're functional. I pay my bills. I go to work. I'm doing okay. Everything's fine. Financially, I'm not in the red. I'm okay. Like everything's okay. But what I didn't realize was that I wasn't meeting my potential. After I fixed that, after we I realized what it was and I started doing the right things. Wow. I mean, it's just everything became easier. It's like I was happier. Things became easier. And then I had anesthesia. and it became hard again. It was really interesting. And that's what I want really people to know. And that's why we are so happy you're here, because people don't know these things. And so unless it's severe, they think that they don't have a problem. No, it doesn't have to be severe.
And it's additive.
And it's robbing you of your potential.
And it adds up. We'll talk about some of the treatments in the next episode, but there was a new article just last week in The Economist on the incidence of traumatic brain injury in prisons. And
what about the homeless?
It's skyrocketed.
Yeah.
There's another study from Toronto on 58% of the homeless men, 42% of the homeless women had a significant brain injury before they were homeless. And I did a study with Rob Johnson at Sierra Tucson, a large drug treatment hospital in Arizona. 44% of the new admissions to that hospital had a significant brain injury before they were homeless. It may be more important than you have genetic vulnerability to mental health issues. And people go, oh, but it's genetic. It's like, yeah, because everybody was in the car when they had the accident.
Right.
And nobody knows, because as Jerri and I talked about, and you and I know, most psychiatrists, so they see psychiatrists who never look at the brain. And so they go, oh, you have 6 of these 9 symptoms, you're depressed, take Prozac, which for some brains is just not the right thing.
But it also increases shame and stigma. If you don't, if you really don't help these people understand where it's coming from. And that's, the movie Quiet Explosions does such a great job of really showing, decreasing that stigma, decreasing shame, showing, how much these people struggle. And they're really, these are highly functional people who now are really struggling and they're in pain. So I strongly recommend you watch the movie. If you know someone struggling, if you've struggled, if there's anyone that you think could benefit from understanding more about the effect of brain injury, even when you can't see gray matter, when you're not like me, where you think it has to be that you've lost part of your skull. No, it can be a car accident that you walked away from.
Need to lose consciousness.
Right.
Jerri, didn't that surprise you?
Well, I learned so much. Honestly, I was like a sponge, just soaking it all up. And I had to be the encyclopedia and the dictionary for everybody, but to translate it in a way that people could understand it with not like huge medical jargon that they would get turned off. And at quietexplosions.com, which is the website, there's a resource page, and everything is on there. Dr. Amen's clinic, all the clinics all over the country, where Dr. Gordon's doctors who have been trained all over the country. There's so much on that website. We have quotes from doctors all over the world, and it's just amazing. You can get a lot of information on the website, as well as, seeing the film. People write to me afterward, and I'm sure they send notes to all these doctors as well. And we do respond. So I'm very grateful for people who reach out to us. And we want to do everything to help every human being. The point of me making this movie was to help more people and to positively influence society in the realm of traumatic brain injury and PTSD. And through this journey, not only did I learn so much, but I became friends with some of the gurus and most brilliant people in the world who deal with the brain. And I just feel so grateful for that, honestly.
Well, your brain is so important. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the treatments that are covered in Quiet Explosions. You can learn more about it at quietexplosions.com. You can also watch the documentary on Amazon Prime or Vimeo. We are so grateful to Jerri for writing, directing, and producing Quiet Explosions. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are here with our friend Jerri Sher, writer, director, producer of Quiet Explosions. I love this movie. It's so important. I actually got to do the opening voiceover for it, and I didn't know when we got to preview the movie. I'm like, I recognize that voice. I like that voice.
I like that voice too.
So the big myth that people have is you can't treat traumatic brain injury. They send people home to rest. And it's like,
it's like, if you had a broken arm, would you just go home and rest?
You would not. You would put it in a healing environment. And I love the movie. The movie talks about transcranial magnetic stimulation. It talks about hyperbaric oxygen. It talks about natural supplements. And it talks about balancing hormones. And what a lot of people don't know is if you've had a traumatic brain injury, it's jostled your pituitary gland, and all of your hormones can become out of whack.
So when my mother fell and she had a really nasty fall, they tested her hormones up because we told them they had to test her hormones because most people don't know. She had none, zero, zip. Everything was flat. They had to replace everything.
So important. So, Jerri, talk about the hope that you saw, and we can dive in a little bit to each of these treatment modalities.
Well, the biggest hope is amazing. Now, the firefighter, Sebastian, who had hyperbaric oxygen therapy in New York every single day for like 6 to 9 months, Dr. Alan Sher, he could not even put a sentence together after he was so traumatized from 9/11 because he was pulling out all of the bodies of his fellow firefighters. He was completely a wreck. This guy could not speak. He was really in bad shape. Dr. Alan Sher said, let's put you in hyperbaric. He treated him for 9 to 12 months. He still treats him. And this man now is like another human being and the kindest soul. I mean, he helps other people. And we are just so grateful that Dr. Sher in San Francisco told us about his father, Dr. Sher in New York, and then he told us about the firefighter, Sebastian. The hope is that not only are these people well again, but now they're helping other people. Each person of the movie is doing something so fabulous to give back because they're so grateful that they have their lives back. I mean, look at Mark Rippon. He a quarterback who he built a pediatric hospital in Spokane to help children. I mean, this man has a heart of gold. And we toured the hospital and spoke to some of the families. What he has done to help society, and through Dr. Amen's clinic and working on TMS, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation, through Dr. Salmons in Colorado, he's getting better, and it's remarkable.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So hyperbaric oxygen. Had you ever heard of that before you did the movie?
I did not. And you know what? People don't know about it. Most people don't know about it. In 10 years, it'll be more common, sort of like what CTE and MRI was like 30 years ago. But unfortunately, Americans don't know about it. It's very prevalent in Israel. It's huge in Israel. I mean, they put 200 people in a chamber at once, and they have 10,000 people on the waiting list.
Wow. Well, when because we've got them in our clinics, and when COVID happened and no one was coming in to use it, I'm like, we're moving one to my house because I love it so much. So they weren't being used. So I'm like, I'm going to use one. So I moved it to my house because I needed to do it. And I love it because I'm not claustrophobic. In fact, I love being in the little cocoon. And it's like, that was my way during COVID when there's so many people in the house. It's like, I get to get away from everybody. This is my little meditation spot. It was like, it's so amazing. I feel so much better.
So I first learned about it maybe 15, 20 years ago. I was at a conference with Mike Usler. Mike was a nuclear medicine professor at UCLA. And he showed me the before and after SPECT scans of people who were in hyperbaric chambers. And SPECT is a study we do at Amen Clinics. It looks at blood flow and activity, looks at how the brain works. And they were so much better.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been following the research, and we do it at Amen Clinics, and it's just so helpful. And there are virtually no side effects. And that's what, they taught us in medical school. First, do no harm. Use the least toxic, most effective treatment. So heal with oxygen under a little bit of pressure. Why not? I remember my dad, he wasn't doing well. And he he was having these nightmares at night. He was seeing things.
Right.
And, and I scanned him. He had low blood flow to his brain, put him in a hyperbaric chamber, and it just
drive him back to work.
His brain up. And I published a study on soldiers who were involved in blast injuries and significant increased blood flow to the brain. And we published it in the journal Neurotrauma. But then the traditional brain imaging doctors like, oh, don't believe that. It's placebo. And it's like, look at the scans before and after.
You can see it.
It's just.
But more than you can see it, you can feel it. I mean, that's the important thing is, when people are functioning better, that's what's important. So
oxygen is free, like they say in the movie. The reason that it's not, talked about so much is it's not a pharma company where they're going to make money to sell more drugs and more pharmaceuticals. It's sort of a catch-22. This happens in life in many industries, as you know. So
right.
Eventually, though, people are going to realize, and I'm pretty sure that in the military, for anyone in the military, there's a way to do it for free through various VA hospitals.
Yeah, probably. Because, I mean, the machines themselves are, where the expense lies is in the actual machine because it's got to go under pressure. But probably for the VA, I would think that soldiers have an advantage to be able to get them.
Well, and then, so there's hyperbaric oxygen, transcranial magnetic stimulation, which is becoming way more popular. There are TMS centers all over the world now. Mm-hmm. And we're basically using energy, magnetic fields, to either increase activity in the brain or to decrease activity in the brain. And you told some stories of how incredibly helpful that was.
Well, Mark Rippin, and I was just so grateful that he actually let us sit in on one of his sessions and film it while he was having TMS. And it was so ironic because we were in Spokane, Washington, and that happened to be the day, which is once every 3 months, that Dr. Sammons comes to Spokane. So we got to meet him and see him and interview him. And honestly, the magnetic stimulation that was happening in Mark's brain, which sounded almost like a woodpecker to me at the time, he swears by it. Mark Rippin said this really brought him back to life. I mean, this was one of the methods. I mean, he's used many methods and also been seen at the Emmy clinics. But he really felt, and he'll go every now and then, every few months for like a pickup kind of thing. He just swears by it. And Dr. Sammons is having tremendous, tremendous positivity with other patients as well.
Well, in our experience, especially when you do scan-guided TMS, to really have a sense of should I stimulate it or calm it, that's important. And then you developed a very special relationship with Mark Gordon, who's an endocrinologist that helps balance people's hormones. And that's a major part of getting people well again.
Absolutely.
And how did you meet Dr. Gordon?
Well, he was written up in the book that Andrew wrote. And when I read the book, I was taken with Andrew Marr, but I was more taken with this doctor who lived in my backyard in Encino. And he's like, they're saying he's a neuroendocrinologist, and here he's helping this guy. I'm like, this does not make any sense to me. I have to find out more about this because it's so compelling and it could help so many people. And when I first met Dr. Gordon, I just couldn't believe that an endocrinologist had figured this all out, because Andrew was really very severe. I mean, he was one of the sickest persons of the movie. And this guy who was a Green Beret and helping, people was a blast guy. So he would blast buildings in Iraq, Afghanistan, and blow them up. And all of these blasts were, IEDs were happening near his head. So months later, he couldn't function at all. I mean, he was severe. So he'd be in a closet in the fetal position, just rocking and crying for like 12 hours. And his wife was so scared. He tried to take his life a few times. So he had tried every modality. And when he finally, Mark Gordon reached out to him when he heard about him. And he said, oh, what the heck? It's another person. I'll just try it. He just thought at this point, no one could help him. And when Mark looked at his blood work, it was so astounding that he was missing all of these 18 hormones in his brain. And the minute they started replenishing it, Andrew said he felt like Cinderella, like he had glass slippers on because his whole life had come back to him.
It's like Lazarus. It's crazy. And that's not a surprise to us because we see it all the time. I mean, I saw it with my own mother. So who was just circling the drain at one point. It wasn't good. And then she just like bounced back. So, I mean, we know how important that is. You've got to it's not, what I love about this, what we're talking about is it's not one thing. You need to really check all of it. It's biopsychosocial, spiritual. You need to really look at all of those circles.
We developed this mnemonic, Bright Minds. If you want to keep your brain healthy or rescue it, if it's headed to the dark place, you have to prevent or treat the 11 major risk factors that steal your mind, like blood flow and retirement and aging and inflammation and genetics and head trauma and toxins. The N is neurohormone disorders. And, I've just seen this epidemic of low testosterone in young men. And it's horrifying.
And part of it's our diet, but it could be head
Part
injuries.
of it's the toxins. I don't know, Jerry, if you saw the new study, but we should have done that on Breaking the News, that the size of male genitals is decreasing because of the exposure to toxins.
Right.
That people who had a higher environmentally toxic load had a lower sperm count, which is devastating for young families, and smaller genitals, which would just horrify everybody. So hormones matter. All 11 of those risk factors matter, but a lot of people in psychiatry never think about DHEA, testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, prolactin, and so on.
And you go after a lot of that in this movie. You really address a lot of the things that happen that most people don't address. So in Quiet Explosions, I love the movie. We went to the premiere and I just thought it was great. But what I thought was so interesting is that you didn't just go at it from a very traditional medical perspective. It was like, we're going to address all of these things that don't normally get addressed. And those patients got well. And that was just a really cool thing to see. And that's what we see is, you have to think outside the box. You've got to be looking at all of it.
Day in and day out. And now that we're in the middle of this pandemic, COVID-19 is going to become one of those risk factors. The second I in Bright Minds is immunity and infections, which obviously we're dealing with.
So maybe that will be something you work on next.
Well, there are wonderful things happening, and I'm in talks and discussions with people, and I never worry about the next thing because honestly, the right thing happens for what I'm supposed to do next. And I really believe in my heart and the universe. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give people a compelling story that entertains them, but at the same time educates them.
Yes.
It's different from maybe going to a lecture or different from reading a book. It's just, look, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. And that's exactly what happens in these movies that I make, because there's 4 frames in a second. And we have visuals, we have animation, and we have music, and we have all of these elements that form in your brain, and it really is indelible in there. So people learn a lot from the movie just as much as they would if they were to read a book.
They do, and you become attached to the outcomes of the people in it, and that's really cool. I remember, I was fortunate to be at the premiere, so I got to meet them, and that was just awesome. But even in the movie, you're on the journey with them. So you're seeing the pain and you're feeling their pain and just what they've lost. And then you're watching them just, come back. And it's, I think for so many of us, we've got people in our families and that's what we want. We want that hope. So it gives you that hope to be able to see people come back.
Well, when we come back, we're going to talk more about hope and how you are not stuck with the brain you have, that you can make it better, and in quiet explosions, healing the brain. Jerri just does a masterful job of giving people hope. Stay with us.
Whether you're a student or parent of a student, your competitive advantage is the actual physical health of your brain. Hi, I'm Dr. Daniel Amen. I'm a child psychiatrist and the founder of Amen Clinics. And one of my favorite courses is Brain Thrive by 25. The course is fun, it's interactive, get your brain right, and your mind will follow.
Welcome back. We are still here with our friend Jerri Sher, and we're talking about quiet explosions. And we're going to talk about hope in this episode. I think that's the big message. That's what my takeaway was from this movie. It was so great to see these people on their journey of feeling so terrible, and then just in the end having so much hope and seeing the turnaround. And I just really appreciate that, Jerri, that was the message of the movie, was hope.
Thank you so much, Tana. We want people to realize that there is always a way to get better, to feel better, and to improve your life. And if we gave the message of hope, that's exactly what I was hoping to do, because all of these people went through such an arc, the beginning, middle, and end of the movie. But at the end, they really are different people. So we just want people to show at the end of the film that you can go through transformation, and it doesn't always have to be a life of hell. You can change and improve, and there is hope, especially in the world of brain health. And no one brings it out better than Dr. Amen and the Amen Clinics, that there is a way to improve your life through nutrition, through hormones, through a million different ways, and we've gone through some of them. We are extremely grateful to you, Dr. Amen, for being on some of our Q&As with me and some of the other cast of the film for our virtual screenings for groups. And there are many ways that people can see the film now through groups. The Brain Health Magazine did an entire day helping hundreds of people. I think we had over 800 people on that Q&A that we did for them. So, and they were particularly excited to see the cast and crew and our doctors and experts. So I'm very grateful for that. It's all on our website for people who want to do such a thing.
That's amazing.
So the big message is you're not stuck with the brain you have. Mm-hmm. You can make it better. We can show that over and over and over again. And yet, I think, Jerri, many people don't care about their brains. They let their children hit soccer balls with their head or engage in dangerous behavior.
Because they don't know. I think it's important to get the message out there. They don't really understand.
And sometimes, even when they do, one of our daughter's friends wants to get a motorcycle, and I'm just shaking my head. Like, have you not been paying attention to what's going on in the world? And the whole issue of traumatic brain injury, when I first met Anthony Davis, so Anthony's one of the stars of the movie, it was 2007. And he's the Hall of Fame running back from USC. He's called the Notre Dame Killer because in 1972, he scored 6 touchdowns against the University of Notre Dame. And in 1974, he scored 4 more touchdowns. No one's ever done that in history. But he was confused and had a bad memory and was irritable and was driving on the 405, one of the freeways here in Southern California. And he pulled off to the side because he had no idea where he was going. And he got very upset and called one of his friends at USC. And he said, "Oh, you should go see Dr. Amen." And when I met him, his brain was terrible. But he was such a sweet guy.
Yeah, he's really sweet.
And he's like, Doc, tell me what to do. And he just did it. Yeah. And through the things we talk about, especially the supplements, within just a couple of months, he's dramatically better. And then he starts sending me all of his friends. And it was because of Anthony. He had me lecture at the NFL Players Association's meeting in Los Angeles, where I had met many of the Los Angeles Rams I'd idolized when I was a child, because I loved football growing up. And it's because of Anthony we started our NFL study. And didn't you just love interviewing him?
Anthony was such a gem. And honestly, I'm so grateful that I got to know him, because look at this guy's so famous. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated magazine twice. And when I mention the name Anthony Davis to some people in my generation, they go crazy. Like, oh my God, the Notre Dame killer. Are you kidding me? He's people watch the movie just because they want to see Anthony Davis. Yeah. But he told me, he spoke from the heart, which I was very grateful for. He said, look, Jerri, after 5 years in the NFL, I knew I had to get out. I knew I was messing up my brain so much that if I didn't leave then, I would have been mush. My head would have been gone. So he was smart enough to know that he shouldn't stay in longer than the 5 years. And when we show his brain and before and after on the screen, most people who comment about the movie comment about that. They say, when we saw Anthony Davis's brain 10 years before and 10 years after, that was so telling. We got it. We understood. So I'm very grateful for the scans and everything that I saw. And I'm very grateful that I had my brain scanned, because, when you told me that my brain was like your mom's brain, from the book I read about your mother, I was so excited. That meant the most to me. It's just amazing what the SPECT scans can show. That's what Annie said to me. She said, Jerri, when I saw the SPECT scan and see what's happening in my brain, and I discuss it with my other doctors now, they understand and they know how to treat me. And so I think you've done just such a magnanimous job about helping the universe. And we just have to get the word out there to everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I still have my haters. Yesterday, like within a matter of 20 minutes, I had 2 haters sort of surface. And I just shake my head.
But they're the old guard.
Like, after all this time, why wouldn't people want more information? And then I realized that I go after them a lot.
Right. I'm like, you can't go after them and think they're not going to come after you.
It's like you can't go to war and shoot people without them shooting
wasn't
back.
It Anthony Davis who said, Doc, they only go after the guy with the ball?
Right. They only try to tackle people with the ball. So
it's just because of jealousy, I think, because I've tried to analyze this through the journey of, because don't forget, your name came up a lot in my 2 years and before I even called. It wasn't until Dr. Emmett Miller, who I trust completely, and he's in my 12-part series, told me, you know what, Daniel Amen's good. He's okay. He's real. He's the real thing. When he told me that, then I knew I could call you. But I had heard so much riffraff, honestly, it's jealousy. I really believe that.
Yeah. Well, because it means they have to change the paradigm. And that's not something that the old guard wants to do easily.
So I forgot that connection with Emmett Miller. What docuseries is he in with you?
So I did a 12-part series called Live Life, Awaken Your Inner Power, which is a story of people who have healed through alternative medicine, and each one is a different healing story. And Emmett Miller and Dr. Bruce Lipton and Dr. Candace Pert and Master John Douglas are the 4 main healers in that series.
Emmett and I used to work together. He used to work in my clinic in Northern California. I loved him. He was the good older brother in my life.
He's a genius, and he invented mind-body science in the 70s, and he believes in the whole body, the whole unit. not just your elbow or your ear or your eye. He cares about the whole being. And that's how he developed guided imagery. And he saved a little boy with a brain tumor who the doctor said would be dead in 2 years.
It's amazing. Well, we adore you. We are so grateful to know you. And
it's a great movie.
We just want everyone to watch Quiet Explosions. If you go to quietexplosions.com and learn about it. You can stream it on Amazon Prime. Does Vimeo have a streaming service? I didn't know.
Amazon and Vimeo, and next week it's on all of the platforms like Apple TV, iTunes, Vudu, and so on and so forth. And that'll also be on the website. Or you can go to the Quiet Explosions Facebook page to find out more also. But it's on Amazon and Vimeo.
What I would suggest is if you are struggling, if you're listening to this and you've been struggling with any of the symptoms we've talked about, brain fog, depression, crying for unexplained reasons, just no energy, things that you don't know why. Watch the movie and see if any of it resonates with you and get checked. But also anyone you love. I mean, send it to people you love.
Amen clinics, because that's what we do. We help people not only see it, but then fix it.
But send this to someone, have people you love watch this, because it's just it's a message of hope. And it's amazing how many people I run into that have these issues.
Great. Thank you, Jerri.
We're so grateful for you.
Stay with us.
If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're interested in coming to Amen Clinics, use the code PODCAST10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com. For more information, give us a call at 855-978-1363.